Right, let's try that now. Is a sound on now? Have I got sound? Have I got sound? Can you hear sound? All good. Yes, sound is on. Sorry, it wasn't plugged in. Anyway, brew with a view. Just giving you a tour of London. Brew with a view on it's sort of midsummer now, isn't it? Really. There we look out over central London, down there towards Parliament, the Eye. Mooch over towards Chelsea, and then over there Notting Hill and Ting, and then if we go over, we'll see the sun go down, sun over Wembley, and look, it's quite glorious over this way. But Harrow on the Hill, Wembley Stadium, Harrow on the Hill, bright, beautiful sun. There we go, and there we have it. So try and keep the sun in the background as I orientate this back round. Face, there we go. The sun can illuminate me. And let's have a little backdrop of you know, the West End of London. Hello everyone. Okay, right, brew with a view. I forgot to bring my brew up, so it's just a brew without a view, without a brew. Sorry, there we go. Anyway, just a little update. It's been a bit of a revival of my brew review, so I'm sort of going to try and do them, but they'll be impromptu. There won't be any warning, no pattern to them, but I'll try and do a regular update. So I posted something on social media, and it's done incredibly well, and it was to do with a unit that I was on. I was on a special maritime unit that the police set up. It was called Maritime Operations. And it was a very physical posting, and I was a field intelligence officer for this unit, as well as being an abseiler and boat operator and sort of all the boaty stuff. But my main skills were I was quite an apt abseiler. Actually, I did very well at it. It was something I was just naturally gifted with, and the other bit was to go out and put jobs together. Now the team, if you look at the picture, the team that I'm with, the majority of them are armed, and they're what was known as a specialist firearms team. And these were the real sort of kiddies. They call them, there's a book come out, Good Guys Wear Black or something. You know, they're highly trained, you know, firearms boys, and they were very active, and they had quite a high kill rate to their name. And also we had dog handlers from a specialist part of the dog unit. So we would abseil with dogs, we would go out to sea. We used to go out to the 12-mile limit and do boat intercepts, counter-terrorism work, armed intercepts, quite a lot of armed intercepts on vessels, and also when it come to taking out the pedos on the boats. They were good. I put together a job once in Brentford, which seemed to have a high percentage of pedos, Brentford, and it'll be in the book. And these pedos are created on a sort of where the river, I can't remember the name, is it River Brent, where the River Brent met the Grand Union Canal, met the Thames, and it's called Brentford 8, and it's a maritime term, 8. It's EYOTTEO, and there was all these boats there moored up, and they were just awash with paedophiles. And there was one convicted sex offender there who was quite notorious in the Brentford area. I won't name him because I don't know his status at the moment, but I'll check up on it. I've got no problem naming convicted sex offenders, but just erring outside of caution here to find out exactly whether he's dead, alive, or whatever he is. And he'd set himself up as a childminder, and this was a guy in his, I suppose, in his late 60s. He was just, it did what it said on the tin with him. He was just a dirty paedophile. Okay, he was well known in the area as being a dirty paedophile. And I've actually spoken to a victim of his, a grown man who was sexually abused by this nonce as a kid. And these boat boat communities, it was like they were the backlash of the New Age travellers that sort of plagued the UK, all this sort of anarchy and free living and don't pay the poll tax, blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff. Opting out of life, not doing any work, not paying any tax, and they weren't my people. But stuff they believed in, I was sort of on board with. But along with it was this anti-establishment hatred, that the police are the Babylon, and it never made sense. But what got me was most of them were from white middle class families, and they were like taking a stance against globalism and all that. Yet, reaping the fruits of their parents' privileged lifestyle that they're given them. And there was one particular woman, and she'd got herself a boat, and she was into raving and taking mushrooms and ting. And she had a little daughter, and she used to, when she went out to this little island on the Thames to commandeer these crusties, and they just hold these massive sort of, if you piss up, he take mushroom, listen to. She'd leave her daughter, to be babysat by a paedophile, this convicted paedophile. And this is what we was up against. We look at one level with the pedos, you see they're clever and they're devious and they're deceptive and they're very snaky, as the devil is. But also, we've got sometimes parents with their unbelievable failure to protect. Parents that put their kids, due to naivety, stupidity, or deliberately, at risk of these nonsense. And this is something this woman did. She saw us, the anti-paedophile police, as the Babylon, but not the convicted sex offender who was abusing a daughter as a wrongdoer. Really is cognitive distortion, and again, white, middle class, the naivety is just, you can't believe it. And we ended up raiding quite a few of these communities, and it was all the same. It was all, if you smoke cannabis, you're a good person, and the police are all bad people, and the odd individuals, So anyway, the unit we was on, we were quite a team. We were a tight little unit, and we were highly professional and good at what we did. And we literally intercepted anything that floated on the Thames. So any boat that come up, we were on it, and that was that. And there were some very funny anecdotes that went with it as well. I recall on one occasion, again, this will be in the book, we had a dog handler. Again, I won't name him, but he knows who he is. And he was an ex-Olympic wrestler. He was a giant of a man and a very, very tough guy to go with it. And he had a superb little sniffer dog. And we went on board an incredibly expensive sort of yacht that had sailed its way up the Thames and did an armed intercept on it because they weren't answering radio calls. And when we went in, we first thing we did was the armed team went on board, secured everything, and then we chucked the ballistic sniffer dog in there. And this dog had a habit of defecating everywhere he went. And so we boarded the boat and chucked this dog on, and the dog had a massive turnout on this brand new yacht. And then the dog handler went down to retrieve his dog, and he was a monster of a guy. He wasn't short of about 10 and incredibly proportionately built. And he trod in the dog shite and he slipped over, and he went flying. The boat keeled over because of the the sheer weight of him and the dispersal, and it rocked over, caused him to fall, and he headbutted their kitchen units and knocked all their kitchen units off and smeared dog turd absolutely everywhere. So it was much to the dismay of the sailors' boat. But anyway, happy days. But my point with this is that the unit we was on, anything that moved or was reported as an anomaly in the maritime security, we would hit it. Now, it didn't take much for the way to go about that the police had this unit, and we just become incredibly successful. Even to the point we were utilised to really kick the drug dealing, the street drug dealing in Camden Lock straight in the knackers. And after about 2 months of hard racing at Camden Lock, we near enough eliminated the street dealing scene. And the shopkeepers are absolutely over the moon with us. But of course, as soon as we went, it came back, and it's an absolute mess over there. But for the time being, we did our job, and that's what the police are meant to do their job. And of course, when they go, the cat's away, the mice are going to play. That's how it works. But let's not, John Boy, let's not, get distracted from what we're meant to do. So if the crime keeps coming back, then the police should keep coming back, and that's that. The public pay to be protected. Now, across the channel, because I think this is getting to a critical point now, and there seems to be a pattern, a quite clear pattern of the people coming across. It doesn't seem to be representative of whatever society they're coming from, in respect to age, gender, blah blah blah. It just seems to be men of fighting age, that genre, So we're looking at sort of in their late teens to sort of early 30s, young men from predominantly Muslim countries, whether it be Libya, Somalia, Eritrea, Syria, the Arab states, the Middle Eastern states, everything else, coming over on these boats, which I've discussed before in it, are organised, what I was told, by Turkish gangsters, charging €2,500 per visit, with no sort of connotation connected to fleeing war zones. It just really is for financial migration. And we're seeing them coming over en masse, up to 1,200 a day, and that's a conservative estimate, every stay. Now that's an illegal entry into the country, in a boat which isn't necessarily fast moving, because these don't even look like they're rigid inflatable. They look like they purely are inflatable. They look like they've even got inflatable holes from what I've seen, powered by a couple of outboard motors, and with maybe a navigator and a coxswain on there. So the guys bringing them over, those that are behind the wheel, behind the rudder, behind the engines, they clearly is a conspiracy to bring people into illegal entry into this country. So there's criminality there straight away. Those on the boat are committing an offence because they're coming in illegally. But see, the law has been changed. Now, and then we saw a thing set up called the Border Force. So I've been looking at the legislation in respect to this, and it doesn't seem to come under the police's jurisdiction. It is given to the Border Force. And if the Border Force go up there and they usher the boats onto shore, it is not seen as illegal entry, right? Therefore, the provisions of the Immigration Act in respect to illegal entry and everything else should be kicking in, but it's not. If they escort the boats in, or they come under their watch as they're being brought in ashore, it's classed as an arrival, right? An illegal arrival. And therefore, how these people are treated is totally different. So that's the essence of it, an illegal entry or an illegal arrival. And what the Border Force are doing is they're basically commuting the offence of illegal entry into the softer offence of arrival. And therefore, how they're dealt with by the judiciary, if they are ever going to be dealt with by the judiciary, is affected. But there's also that if someone does come in illegally, they're subject to certain conditions, and some of that relates to permanent residency in this country. And there is a provision under the Immigration Act that they should be as sort of quick as practicable, processed and sent back to the country of origin, right? And that doesn't be happening. We've just seen in Preston, they've shoved them all exclusively into quite an upmarket hotel, and Serco have been given the full contract for the next few years to solely deal with these young men, migrant, whatever they are, coming over on the boats and being shoved in there. So I'm going to be looking into this legislation, and I'm going to be sort of breaking it down. I'm going to do a little presentation on it, because it's okay sort of spouting off about stuff, but you can make yourself look a fool when you come up against a legal advocate who actually specialises in immigration matters, and sometimes these guys have access to defence lawyers and defence barristers because the system allows it. So we've got to look at the system and why it allows it and what it is protecting them from. And that's what I'm going to be doing, and looking at the roles and the jurisdiction and the standard operating practices of the United Kingdom Border Force. Actually, who are they and what do they do? Because if you look at that unit I was on, we were a sort of a border force, but we were a proactive police maritime unit that operated up and to the international shipping, the international borders. What do they call it? The international shipping. There's a word for it. It's international line. It's 12 miles out to sea, and that's where sort of solely maritime law takes over, and the laws of the land they finish. So anything over that, then it's the laws of the high seas, and you know, and whatever that may entail. But we were effective, and we were a huge deterrent. And to intercept one of these dinghies, which I don't know the speed they go at, but I wouldn't have thought they exceed anything over 20 knots because of the load they're carrying and sort of like the makeup of the boat. But if you've got the ribs we run, some of them went up to 65 knots quite comfortably with a solid team of about 12 armed coppers and dogs. And we still had room then for property and prisoners to swing them on the boat. So it's more than doable to intercept these things. Now, I would, not looking at the legislation, so I'm going to say this with total ignorance now. What I would do is that as the boats come in, I would intercept them, a policing unit, intercept them, bring them into shore and straight away nick the coxswain and his crew, whatever that consists of, like I said, a navigator or another helmsman or whatever. They get nicked. They're clearly facilitate criminality, and I'd nick them probably under some organised crime legislation, and definitely under immigration, facilitating illegal entry into the UK or whatever. So they'd be nicked. The boat would then be evidence and would then be property of the Crown. So you would take that boat, you would seize that boat. I'm going to stand here because that sun's going to go down as I talk, and I think that'll be quite nice to watch that. Red fiery ball as it drops down as I talk. Right, so they'd get nicked, and I would then start tapping in from information. There's every chance that they too would be illegal entries into the country, right? But they're criminals as well, so there'd be no bail, so they wouldn't be residing in the Preston Hilton. They would be residing in a HMP, which is where they deserve to be. And those that are brought in, they too should then be subject to the provisions of a criminal law, right? And not treated as an arrival, because the border force have exchanged the illegal entry into an offence of being an illegal arrivee, right? Therefore stick to them as being an illegal entry. But there was a bit of new legislation that came out after the 10th of February 2025 that I'm going to be looking into. And it seems that they've deliberately engineered the legislation and you know, the inception of the border force to facilitate this mass entry, illegal entry into the United Kingdom. It just seems so bizarre that this is allowed to come on. And I compare this to the 1990s, when loads of people were doing the booze cruises and were going out on the ferries off to Dunkirk and off to Calais and what have you, loading up with cheaper tobacco and cheap wine and cheap brandy, the spirits and the tobacco and the wines, and bringing them in well over, you know, your allowed allowance, and chancing your arm in a white van. Now the government didn't like that because of the revenue was being stolen, and they soon put an end to it by very tough immigration and customs policing. You know, they were seizing vans, they were banging people up, and the customs are very, very powerful legislation, you know, and they never even needed a warrant. You know, they sort of made their own warrant because it's down to the Queen's purse back then. And they put an end to it very, very quickly. So why are they not putting an end to this? It is so doable, it's untrue. And you're talking, you know, to a man who knows. And we have done this, and we've not only done this on the canals and the tidal riverways, we've done this on the high seas. And we used to go to sea in every single sea state, you know, because we was an emergency service. And it was so achievable and so doable. You know, so if anyone who's politically connected wants to contact me regarding this, please do. And I'll definitely try and look into it and put a presentation in this and put some advice out to the government as to where you should be going with this. And then from there we can draw an inference, we can draw a common sense decision as to why John, Roy, hello Roy. Roy, how are you, mate? My word, I remember you, Roy. Roy the boy from the casino. How are you, my brother? Good, good, good. God bless you, Roy. Roy, I met with the Daves and all that lot last year, so maybe a private discussion on that one. But so we can draw an inference, a common sense decision as to the government's reluctance to address this. Now, in respect to migration and immigration, it doesn't necessarily bother me. Well, it didn't bother me when, you know, the average annual allowance was about 7,000 to 8,000 people. The other year, it was 120,000 people. You know, that's getting onto the unsustainable, surely. And someone attacked me saying that I was sort of dismissing my Christian values by sort of commenting on those that are coming in. But look, people come into this country illegal and people do flee war and everything else, but there's a correct channel and a correct way of doing it. And sliding in via the back door and then sort of blending off into society, or coming in and then getting housed at the taxpayer's expense, isn't the right way of doing it. It's getting people's backs up, and especially then getting caught up in organised criminality and extremely high-level sexual crime against vulnerables, women and children, which is we're sort of seeing happen. And if you're getting predominantly all men coming over of that sort of virile fighting age, well, what women are they going to have access to? It's only going to be the local women, and at some point, if you put a predominantly large group of men all together, the local girls, you know, the testosterone is going to do its job, and they're going to be hungry for what's out there, I would have thought, you know, just saying. And it can only end one way, and that's in unconsensual sexual acts, you know. So it's not good. The government shouldn't be doing this. You know, there is an immigration policy and they should be dealing with it. So again, this isn't a rant at foreigners or anything else. This is really a common sense discussion on fair play. And I don't think we're getting fair play here. I think that this could end up in a very, very serious situation, especially if there is a deeper agenda going on here, which I was told about 5 years ago by an individual who had connections to the intelligence services, saying that this is deliberately being allowed to happen. And I sort of dismissed it to start with, and now I'm thinking, there's something in this. How can 1,200 people come from the same part of Europe via the same route with the same MO and land on the same part of the UK, and the police do F all, and they are just guided in? And like I said to you, the devil is in the detail, and it all comes down, in my opinion, to the illegal entry and the illegal arrival. It's all in a word, right? Look at this, it's illegal arrival. And that means the whole process is different to the illegal entry. And when the board force come in and escort them in, it commutes that entry to an arrival. And I don't know if anyone else has looked into this, but I have been. And so someone said it's the Kalergi plan. Can you explain that? Can we look into that? I've never heard of that Kalergi plan. I definitely will. I like people's views and opinions on this one, which would be good. And again, you know, the French, yeah, I mean, money is put aside and given to France for their, and they've been filmed waving them off. Well, doesn't that just antagonise the British even more by them doing that? Would we be the same? Would we be waving them off to France? And probably, you know, probably. But, you know, the British, we're a country of fair play. And we're not seeing fair play. We are not seeing fairness, you know. See, there's a difference between equality and equity. A huge difference, you know. And some people need a leg up in society and others don't. And that's called equity. And equality is everyone gets the same. Well, some people don't need that help, you know. There's others that need a bit more. So I'm more for equity than I am for equality. But when it comes to law, everyone should be treated the same. And that includes defendants, and that brings about a fairness. So as an ex-detective, if I was to, especially when I dealt with pedophiles and sexual offenders, if I was to give them a hard time, that wouldn't be the right thing to do, right? And it would jeopardise my case, and it would weaken me, and it would put me up for ridicule and allegations of malpractice, right? Which would then weaken the case and look at getting it, put it at risk of being kicked out of court, and then is my victim getting the justice they deserve? No. But if I do a solid, fair, open and transparent, but totally robust and heartless and resilient and stoic investigation into a paedophile, and they get convicted, then that's fair. That's fair. And don't expect anything other than that from me, because that's what I did. And at times I was heartless because I didn't need to have a heart for the defendant on this. I didn't, you know, they were my enemy and I was gunning for them and they knew it, but I would do everything the right way. And if the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, you know, decreed that under its provisions that person is to be given a hot drink and a meal, then so be it, give them a hot drink and a meal. I deprive them of that because they're a pedo. I then breach, you know, the provisions of that act. And when I interview the person, they've got an outer saying that, you know, they didn't have the right cognitive presence because they hadn't been fed and watered as per the provisions of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. And it might then nullify and negate my interview. So why would I do that? I wouldn't. I would be fair, but I would also be relentless, ruthless, heartless, and like I say, stoic and not give up. And I was very good at it. And it's easy to do. And, you know, coppers that did do that had a very, very good high conviction rate. But if you went round bashing the daylights out of them and sort of deliberately withholding information, you left yourself open to criticism, discipline, and also your case being subject to an appeal. And then at a later point, you're losing the case as well. So, no, do it the right way. But, you know, we've got the capabilities to deal with this. And like, if you look on my Facebook, you'll see the unit I was on, Specialist Operations and Maritime Policing. And, you know, we really were the daddies. It was awesome. So it's totally doable. But I would really like people's opinions on this. And like I said, I'm going to be looking into the Immigration Act, the amended Immigration Act, and you know, this the difference between an entry and an arrival, you know. And you've only got to change one word and you change the whole essence of something, you know. What the whole energy of it changes with just that one word, you know. So it's and they've done that on purpose. And the border force, when they've come in, again, really, what are they about? What are they doing? You know, what are they doing? They're giving up blankets. They're saving people from the high waters. I get that, because that's a British way. That's fair play. That's benevolence. But the border force in them being implemented means that a rival takes place, and that changes the whole legal taste of the thing. The whole vibe changes then, and that I believe is on purpose, and not just the fact these are smiley, nice British people giving out nice warm blue blankets and a cup of soup and a mobile phone, and then pass them on to the immigration services who give them a circle, shove them in a nice hotel, blah de blah de blah. So anyway, a little update on what I've been doing. I've been taking people to Jesus. Amen, amen, amen. You know, and that's what I've done. So Sunday just gone, I was in the East End of London. I was with former, he doesn't like the word, but people know when I say it, former Cray Twins gangster, but more importantly, born again Christian and very, very close friend of mine,